let me start off with United. I mean, their owners are in it for return. I mean, so as Tony says, there are three types. There are the sports washers. There are those who in it for return through capital gains, and there are those who want to do it through dividends. So United's they want to get the return through dividends. That's the wrong type. And the problem with taking dividends out is that obviously that money isn't being invested. But if I look at United, I mean, their problem is not a lack of investment. I mean, at least in the playing squad. I mean, their problem has not been the quantity of investment; it's been the quality of investment. And that problem is not unique to United. Making good investments in football is extraordinarily difficult because identifying what is uniquely a player's ability and not say the ability of the team that the player plays in, or trying to identify how that player's ability will translate when you put them in your system, that is incredibly difficult. And as I say, Liverpool hired Cambridge physics PhDs to work on this sort of problem. But United rely on, their old boys club, Rio Ferdinand, Darren Fletcher, and Gary Neville, to like talk up who they should sign. And, it should be obvious, who's going to do the job better. Is it the Cambridge people or Darren Fletcher? And in the end,
I would say that, I mean, I'm not saying there's something in between. And the old boys thing, I absolutely agree with. The Cambridge physicists would have to make sure that their models align with, like, I mean, if you think about football success, the most important acquisition Liverpool made in the last 10 years, 20 years, 30 years was Jurgen Klopp. Man City's most important acquisition was Pep. It's basically, so, I mean, this is why it's so bizarre looking at United now, because they're buying players that make absolutely no sense for Ten Hag. Like Casemiro, it's like, what? Like, this just doesn't make any sense for the way the person you bought to orchestrate this thing actually wants to set things up. Is, you'd need, so the statistical model has to conform also with, like, some sense of the chemistry that's being created in terms of what's going to happen on the field, which, I mean, I'm sure we do at Liverpool. But then, I mean, also, I don't want to be too self-righteous, because you look at some of the rubbish we bought over the last 20 or 30, I mean, you come back, it's like when we sold Fernando Torres and replaced him with Andy Carroll, or when Rafa was trying to push out Xabi Alonso and replace him with Gareth Barry. It's
but we only got this right in the last 5 or 6 years. I mean, and the point is that they found the right institutional structure. So the statisticians can't dictate to Klopp, and Klopp can't dictate to the statisticians. They have to come to some kind of agreement. United now, I mean, they have no structure. I mean, they have, just looking at this last transfer window, they signed Christian Eriksen. I mean, he's a good player, but they're not going to play with a number 10 in their team because that's not the system they play. And they currently have 3 number 10s on the books. They have Eriksen, Donny van der Beek, and Bruno Fernandes. And this culminated in Eriksen playing as the false 9 in the first week and the number 8 in the second week.
No, in the second week he was the regista. He was like trying to be what's his name? The Juventus coach, that player. Sorry, the classic Italian deep line.
They also ended up playing them all together. I just want to get back to this money thing. So, are you saying that, in your estimation, like the best model is the John Henry model? Then, I mean, I wanted to ask about other models. Like, people love to say, and I'd like to hear your comment about the way like German football clubs are owned and run, that might be. And I know that's also like a cliche now, but just if you thinking of the Premier League, you're saying no to the Glazers, no to sports washing, and the best kind of model is this kind of John Henry model. And is John Henry the only owner, just from like off the top of your head right now in the Premier League, that acts like that, or are there others who are kind of also operating this way?
I mean, I think Brentford is an interesting one. They have kind of quite an interesting way of signing players, I think. They've made some interesting innovations to get to the Premier League. But out of the top 6, I mean, it's really looks a bit chaotic. I mean, Arsenal, I mean, in the last few years, they've signed Nicola Pepe for, over 70 million. they've had a lot of churn. I mean, they did decently in the last season, but it's not clear that they have any kind of long run financial model that's gonna
Like this season, it looks like their owner is, because before this, their owner was seen as somebody who's just like taking his dividend, like taking his money. And now people might argue, I'm just saying, like in the popular mind, on their sort of among their fans, suddenly they all love the Kroenkes, and the Kroenke is now Kroenke. I'm not full on, but I think in the sort of popular mind, he's moving to a sort of a hedge funder, but he's also interested now because his son was in the documentary, although it was like for 5 seconds. Like now he's interested in investing in the club, building the club, and winning. Whereas before he was just seen as somebody taking money.
I think they, broadly speaking, their problem has been a little bit similar to the United problem, which is that they've been kind of malinvesting. They haven't spent their money on players that actually fit their problems. But they seem to be getting it right in the sense that they're buying young players, they're promoting from their academy, and their team has generally had an improvement. So, I mean, it's hard to really fit them into one category or another. The other kind of example that's worth thinking about is the new Chelsea owner. I mean, he's appointed himself as the director of football, and
He wanted
it's
CR7 and he wanted.
Well, people make fun of him. They say that he thinks he's still in like an American sports league where he can just kind of trade players, where he doesn't understand that that's not how the other clubs, they want money, they don't want players. So he doesn't have a full understanding of the English Premier League. But to your point, he's now being sort of seen as somebody who takes football seriously. Is that what you're trying to suggest?
No, I mean, what I'm trying to suggest is that he's kind of he hasn't set up a structure at all that kind of promotes the long run success of Chelsea. I mean, it's not sustainable that the owner is doing transfer negotiations and deciding which players to buy because they just don't have the expertise.
You can totally see it. Like I mean, like they have Chilwell, who's like one of the best English left backs, and they go and buy Cucurella. So it's like, what are you telling Chilwell? Like, but I mean, yes, and then it wouldn't shock me at all to see Chelsea, and if this doesn't happen, it's okay. It's just that I'm just saying it wouldn't shock me to see Chelsea move in and try and hijack the Casemiro deal because it wants him because this guy clearly has no idea what's going on.
Yeah, he's just throwing his name in for everything. So I mean, yeah, I guess there's quite a few different stories going on. Tottenham, they had a kind of really chaotic period, but they hired the right manager, and he's getting results, and then everything starts to look fine. So there's a fair bit of like idiosyncratic aspect to all of this, and I guess one important caveat on my story of kind of it's okay that some of these guys are looking to earn a return. I think we're on the cusp of kind of an American model dominating the Premier League because so many of the owners are now American. And I think the type of changes that you're going to see is at some point, these guys are going to want to realize their capital gains. And in football, that is pretty difficult because it's very rare that a buyer comes up for a football team. And so how they try to solve this problem in the past was the European Soccer League. If you can guarantee that every year your team is in the new Champions League, you guarantee revenue. And if you guarantee revenue, you can create financial products. You can basically ensure that this firm, that people want to buy the stream of revenue, basically, the share on the stream of revenue. And that's how basically these guys are going to solve their capital gains problem.
That's a really excellent